Welcome back to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
So today we are sifting through a stack of sources that, quite frankly, feels a bit like a historical whodunit.
It really does. You've got biographies, you've got dense legal texts, some very heated sectarian arguments.
Right. And usually when we talk about the mothers of the believers, the wives of the Prophet Muhammad, there's a pretty standard cast of characters. You get Khadija, you get Aisha.
And then the list sort of, it trails off for most people. But the sources we're looking at today, they all point to this one figure who is so often in the background, but was arguably the most intellectually independent woman in that household.
We're talking about Salama.
Hind bint Abi Umayyah.
And what just leaped out at me from these notes is the sheer volume of her work.
Yeah.
She narrated something like 378 hadiths. I mean, that puts her in the absolute top tier.
It does, but it's not just the number, is it? It's the nature of what she reported.
That's the key.
That is the key distinction. Because Salama, she's this fascinating case study. She's almost like a Rorschach test for Islamic history.
How so?
Well, you look at the Sunni sources here, and she's this wise, neutral matriarch, a source of law on prayer, on ritual purity. But then you flip over to the Shia sources.
And she's a political firebrand.
Completely. She's the guardian of the true succession, a staunch loyalist to Ali.
And that's the tension I really want us to explore. How can one woman be this pillar of unity for one group and the ultimate proof of an exclusive theology for the other? It's like we're looking at two different women.
Or at least two heavily curated memories of the same woman.
Curated is the perfect word.
And our mission for this deep dive is to peel back those layers of curation, to see how her legacy was filtered. Because when you look at her actual life, her agency, her rivalry with Aisha, you realize she was not just some passive observer, she was a political actor.
Okay, so let's start with her background. Before she even enters the Prophet's household, she's not a nobody. The sources really stress her lineage. She's from the Banu Makhzum.
Which is absolutely crucial context. You can't understand Meccan politics without Makhzum. They were the aristocracy of the aristocracies.
The rivals to the Prophet's clan, Banu Hashim.
Exactly. So, Salama, she grows up with a silver spoon, but also with a spine. She's literate, she's wealthy, she's politically very astute.
And she was a widow, right? She'd already made the migration to Abyssinia.
Yes, an early convert, she went to Ethiopia to escape persecution. So what this means is, by the time she marries the Prophet, she is a mature woman, she's navigated foreign courts, she's lost a husband, she's raised kids, she is not some young, impressionable girl.
She comes in with a voice.
A very clear voice.
And that voice, I mean, it is not subtle. I found this incident in the sources where she essentially challenges the divine revelation itself, or at least its wording. This is the why are we not mentioned moment.
It is one of the boldest moments in the entire prophetic biography.
Can you lay it out for us?
So the sources tell us she went to the Prophet and asked effectively, why does the Quran address men? Why does it always use the masculine plural and seem to, silence us? She felt women were being left in the margins of the spiritual story.
Okay, hold on a second. That's a massive risk.
It is.
In a community built on submission to revelation, she is questioning the very format of that revelation.
Exactly. But look at the reaction. She isn't rebuked. The tradition says her question actually triggered a new revelation.
Verse 33.35.
Right. Indeed, the Muslim men and Muslim women, the believing men and believing women, it goes on and on, explicitly gendering the text to make sure women were verbally included in that promise of reward.
So this is what some scholars would call a dialogical relationship with the text. She speaks and the text responds.
Precisely. Modern scholars look at this and they see, proto-feminist agency. She recognized that language shapes reality.
If the text only says men, then eventually society might think only men matter.
She forced a clarification, and she did the same thing with jihad, with warfare.
Right, she asked why men get to go fight and earn that specific reward.
And the Prophet clarified that women get equivalent rewards for non-combat roles. But the point is, she asked, she was looking for equity. She didn't just assume her place, she wanted it defined.
That kind of assertiveness, it really sets the stage for the internal household dynamics. And you can't talk about the mothers of the believers without talking about the other heavyweight in the room.
Aisha. And this is where the history gets really spicy. In the mainstream Sunni narrative, Aisha is the female authority. But if you read closely, Salama is constantly acting as her counterweight.
It sounds like a checks and balances system.
That's a great way to put it. If Aisha is all youthful energy, brilliance, and later a very aggressive political stance, Salama is caution, seniority, and correction. And they disagreed on major points of law.
Let's talk about the adult suckling controversy. I read this part of the notes a few times because it seems so bizarre. We need to break this down.
Okay, so in Islamic law, breastfeeding creates a bond called radha. It's like a milk kinship.
Right.
If a woman breastfeeds a child, she becomes like a mother to him. They're then mahram, meaning they can be in the same room without her veil, they can't get married, and so on.
Standard stuff for an infant. But the argument was about adults.
Yes. Aisha believed, based on a specific case, that an adult man could consume a woman's milk to establish this legal kinship. She saw it as a sort of loophole, a way for an adopted son or a frequent male visitor to enter the house freely.
So it's like a legal fiction, a kind of workaround for social convenience.
Exactly. Aisha was being a pragmatist, but Salama, she slammed the door on that. She led the other wives in a hard no.
What was her argument?
She argued that the original incident was a one-time exception, granted for a very specific, difficult situation. It was not a general rule for the community.
So she's the strict constructionist.
Yeah.
Don't turn an exception into a rule.
And she won that argument for the most part. Sunni law largely follows her view, not Aish. But the insight for us isn't just about milk. It's that the Prophet's wives were not a monolith. They had their own legal reasoning, their own ijtihad, and they battled it out.
And the legal battles were just a warm-up for the political ones. Which brings us to the Battle of the Camel, the first civil war. Aisha is leading an army against the Caliph, Ali. What's Salama in all this?
She's the voice in Aisha's ear telling her to stop.
Really?
Oh, yeah. We have these fascinating sort of lost narrations. I say lost because you don't usually find them in the big legal books like Bukhari. You find them in the history books like Tabari.
What do they say?
They say, Salama strongly advised Aisha against rebellion. She reminded her of the Quranic verse telling the Prophet's wives to stay in your houses.
So the history books keep the critique, but the legal books kind of sanitize it.
It's a very common pattern. The legal tradition wants to build a unified system, so it tends to downplay friction between the top companions. It doesn't want to highlight one mother of the believers telling another she was basically sinning by going to war.
But the history books capture that raw friction.
Yes. Salama warned this would cause fitna, civil strife. And from the Shia perspective, of course, this moment is definitive proof.
Absolute gold for their narrative.
It proves Salama stayed loyal to the Prophet's instruction and to Ali while Aisha deviated. It makes Salama the good wife.
Which leads us right into the theological heart of the Sunni-Shia divide. The al-Bayt, the people of the house, who's in the club, and Salama is literally in the room when this gets defined.
She is the sole witness to the hadith of the cloak, or hadith al-Kisa. The scene is iconic. The Prophet gathers Ali, Fatima, Hassan, and Hussein. He covers them all with a cloak and prays for them, identifying them as his al-Bayt.
And Salama, his wife, is standing right there, and she asks a very human question.
She asks, "Am I with them, O messenger of Allah?" I mean, she wants in. She wants to be under that cloak.
And the answer he gives her is, well, it's complicated, isn't it?
It's the ultimate good news, bad news situation. In many versions, including Sunni ones, he tells her, "You are upon goodness," or "You have your own place," but, and this is the kicker, he does not let her under the cloak.
He keeps the group exclusive.
Physically exclusive to Ali and his direct bloodline.
This has to be a massive point of contention. How do the two sides read her exclusion?
For Shias, this is the smoking gun. They say, look, if the wives were part of the infallible, purified al-Bayt, she would have been invited in. The fact he stopped her proves that special spiritual and political leadership is restricted to Ali's line.
And they see her as the honest witness who testifies against her own inclusion.
Sacrificing her own status for the truth. It's a powerful image.
And the Sunnis.
They read it much more softly. They say, look, he said, you are on goodness. He didn't demean her. He just clarified that this specific prayer was for this specific group. They argue the wives are all al-Bayt in a general sense.
But you can't deny the visual. She's left outside the cloak. It implies a hierarchy.
It definitely does. And Salama serves as the guardian of that memory. We've seen her as a legal scholar, a theological witness. But the darker part of her legacy, the part that's really surprising, is her connection to the tragedy of Karbala. She lived a very long time.
She was the last of the prophet's wives to die, right?
The very last. She outlived him by about 50 years. She saw the first 4 caliphs, the civil war, the rise of the Umayyad dynasty.
And she lived long enough to see the prophet's grandson, Hussein, killed by that state.
Which brings us to the red soil.
This story, it's chilling.
It's incredibly dramatic. The narration is called the hadith of the turba. It says that years earlier, the prophet gave Salama a bit of soil from the land of Karbala. He told her, "Keep this. When this soil turns to blood, you will know my grandson Hussein has been martyred."
Wow, talk about a burden to carry. Check in a jar of dirt every day.
She kept it in a jar, and on the day of Ashura in the year 61, she saw the soil turn to fresh blood and screamed. She knew it had happened before any messenger could have possibly reached her.
So here's my question, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up hearing a lot of this history.
Right.
And I can't say I've ever really heard this story emphasized. Why is a narration like this, which is in Sunni books like Musnad Ahmad, so marginalized?
Well, that gets into what we call the canonization gap. You have to ask who was in power when the major hadith collections were being compiled.
The Umayyad dynasty.
Yeah.
The people who killed Hussein.
Exactly. If you're a scholar living under Umayyad rule, you probably don't want to be spreading a prophecy that paints the government as the villains in a divine tragedy.
It's politically dangerous material.
It's subversive. So scholars suggest that these pro-Ali, pro-Hussein narrations were filtered out of the mainstream Sahih books. They survived in, let's call them, underground channels, which later became the Shia core, or in history books that weren't scrutinized as strictly.
So, Salama becomes a vessel for this.
Yeah.
This resistance memory.
That's the power of her longevity. She was the inconvenient witness who wouldn't go away.
It's amazing how much politics shaped what we now think of as purely religious texts. I want to pivot back to her personality, though. We've talked high politics, but the sources also show she was incredibly frank about biology.
Oh, absolutely. She was not prudish. There's a famous narration where she or another woman in her presence asks the prophet about women having wet dreams.
Which, let's be honest, is a conversation that would make a lot of modern religious conservatives very uncomfortable.
It would. In the narration, Salama actually covers her face. She's so embarrassed. She asks, does a woman actually experience that? And the prophet answers very plainly, yes, women are the twin halves of men.
Twin halves of men. That's a profoundly egalitarian statement about physiology.
It is, but, and we have to address the elephant in the room here. In explaining it, the hadith gets into some biology that, well, it clashes with modern science.
The part about the child's resemblance.
Right. It says resemblance is determined by which parent's fluid dominates or comes first.
Right, which, I mean, anyone who took high school biology knows that's not how it works.
No.
It's not about fluid or timing. It's DNA.
Exactly. So this creates a science versus scripture conflict. Critics point to this as a clear scientific error.
And how do believers handle that?
It's a mix. Some try to reinterpret fluid metaphorically, which is a stretch. Others say it was era-appropriate language, explaining a concept in the only terms 7th century Arabs would understand. But for our purposes, the interesting thing is the modesty paradox.
What's that?
Well, a lot of modern religious discourse is very sanitized. It avoids these topics. But here you have a mother of the believers having a frank, technical discussion about female orgasms. Why? Because it was about the law. You needed to know if you had to perform a ritual shower before you could pray.
So knowledge trumped social awkwardness.
For Salama, getting the law right was more important than blushing. She seems to be the ultimate pragmatist.
Whether it's correcting the Quran's wording, blocking Aisha's legal loopholes, or asking about biology, she just wants things to be clear, to be correct.
And that consistency is what makes her so formidable. She lived through everything. The prophet's death, the succession crisis, the civil wars, Karbala. She was this living anchor to that founding generation.
So let's circle back to our original question. How do we reconcile the two Salamas, the Sunni legal authority and the Shia political icon?
I think the answer is we shouldn't try to reconcile them. We should accept that she was both. The sectarian split forced each side to choose which parts of her life to emphasize.
The Sunnis took the law and the Shias took the politics.
That's a great way to put it. Sunnis need her as a pillar of community law, so they downplay the friction with Aisha. Shias need her as a political witness, so they emphasize her loyalty to Ali and her mourning for Hussein.
But the real woman was all of it.
She was all of it, and she is one of the few figures who is practically bulletproof in both traditions. You can quote Salama in a Sunni mosque or a Shia gathering, and people will listen. That is incredibly rare.
You know, it leaves you with this really provocative thought. We always see this period of history as a clash of men, right?
Yeah.
Ali versus Muawiyah, Hussein versus Yazid.
Of course.
But Salama, she represents a kind of road not taken, doesn't she?
That is the big what if. She offered a path of correction without breaking the community. She warned Aisha. She warned about how the al-Bayt were being treated. If her voice had been the dominant political force, not just a respected legal one, well, the map of the Islamic world might look very different today.
A matriarch who saw the train coming off the tracks and tried her best to wave the flag. Salama is definitely a figure worth a much deeper look.
Absolutely.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.